What is going on for the Pacers in their early practices? What have we learned? Who looks good? Who's working on what? And who do I think has been the standout? We'll have a lot to discuss on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, one and all. Happy Thursday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, diving into the early practices from the Pacers. Perfect time for this. They're off on Thursday, so perfect week schedule kind of updates on what's going on, what it signals about the Pacers season, what should we be keeping an eye on in terms of storylines, who looks good, who's hurt, what's changing for the team since they have so much continuity, so much to dive into so you guys can see the behind the scenes of what's going on at these practices and what we've heard, what has been said, etc., etc. Really fun way to do this. And it's been a good time being back in the swing of things. I hope you guys are enjoying seeing everything back in the fold because they play a preseason game in like 5 or 6 days, depending on when you're listening to this. That is unbelievable to me. So let's dive in. Let's take a look at what's going on in the St. Vincent Center for the Pacers as practices have restarted. And I think one of the most interesting kind of subplots of this is there a changed approach to what they're actually doing, right? Because they have so much continuity, so much. If you count two ways, aka if you're counting Quentin Jackson, 14 of the 19 guys in camp played for the Pacers last year, right? The only 5 that would not be would be Tristan Newton, the rookie class, right? So the 3 drafted rookies, Cole Swider and James Wiseman. That's the 5. Here's the thing, though. Freeman, Newton, and Furphy all played in Summer League. So they got exposure to the Pacers systems. They learned the pace requirements. They learned some of the terminology. Like, they know something. They're not coming in with nothing. I'm not comparing them to the players on the team last year, but the only 2 players coming in just totally with nothing, like they're just learning from like recent minicamp experiences and things like that, would be Wiseman and Swider. And so because there's so much continuity and because they are sticking to similar systems from last year to this year, they don't have to do as much of the like grind down to the basic level stuff, right? They're doing a lot more refreshing, as Rick Carlisle and players have called it, instead of what they do in years past, right? Haliburton remembered his first training camp, which he got midseason traded to the Pacers, so it was very meaningful for him. But a lot of down to the basics, teaching the rules of how they're going to play on both ends, right? If this happens, do this. If that happens, do that, right? All sorts of that kind of stuff and how he needs to be involved in that. This year, they don't have to do as much of that kind of stuff because they know a lot of those principles and schemes and styles already. So why bog it down with the basics again? Instead, get to the details, right? Get to the second level. So in some ways, I'm curious what that will mean for Swider and Wiseman as the season progresses, right? They might have to learn a little more on the fly than a typical player, but I do think it's good for the team to be more detail-oriented now than having to work backwards. And that's the advantage that continuity provides, right? That is what is the typical theory of continuity is, hey, we as a team will be better early in the season than other teams that have to work through hurdles before they click. We'll be clicking right away, right? And I think that's going to matter for the Pacers who start off with a tougher schedule, right? Like I've said, through September 17th is difficult for them, right? It's not like so impossible. They play Boston, who's really good, but like they don't play any amazing games or any unwinnable games, the Boston games at home, but it's tough. And then it gets much easier for that next stretch, but that's their first 13 games, right? How they do in that stretch is going to matter a lot, and having continuity can really help them. Jarace Walker said he thinks they could roll the ball out and play, like go on the road and play right now, right? I think that is what the continuity advantage is that the Pacers this quickly into camp. It's been a day, it's been 2 days, whatever. And yeah, they had mini camp right down. A couple of the big men went down to Dallas. Like they're not starting. It's not the second day they've played together since the season ended. It's more than that. But it's still good for them that they have that sort of leg up and things have looked different, right? The details and basics changes have made these practices more unique. I think that's cool. I think that's a smart way of doing things. And I think Carlisle, that has to be a challenge for him as a head coach to find a way to make camp engaging for a roster that's so returning, right? If it's all about the basics to make Cole Swider and James Wiseman know all this stuff, it'd be really boring for everybody else. You'd check out. You're not getting as much value out of things because you need things to be engaging and valuable for as much of the team as possible. And the overwhelming majority of the team, that is more detailed stuff than basics. So I think that's the right way to go. I think that is a smart change of planning from them, and we'll see if it pays dividends. I don't even know if we'll know or not. But I've enjoyed hearing players talk about that so far. The not fun stuff, injuries. James Wiseman's been limited-ish. We can see him doing some stuff, moving, like dribbling, shooting some. He's huge. He is the easiest guy to find. Like I come into practice and I try to find everybody. And James Wiseman, he's a new guy, right? So in theory, he's somebody I would gloss over when like thinking about. You can't miss him. It's super easy. James Johnson, I didn't see him at the first practice. He was back for the second one. Johnny Furphy, ankle injuries in both ankles. Didn't see him on Wednesday. Rick Carlisle explained that he had an issue with one ankle and then hurt the other one that day. And so Wiseman and Furphy, the current injury list so far. I guess various guys are dealing with nicks, bruises, whatever. So they're taking Thursday off now instead of a different day that they had planned originally, so that they can get some early R&R, rest and relaxation, as they head into the weekend and have their fan jam scrimmage on Sunday. So that's a good start. A good way of reason to adjust, I would say, but not fun to have injuries this early. No idea if these will be into the season kind of things at this stage. Cole Swider, we got to talk to him today. He's a new one, and it was pretty clear. Like Rick Carlisle brought it up that this could be the competition for the 15th spot. Sometimes you don't get a coach to just say what that is, or what the competition could be, and more so it's just like, yeah, everybody, we like everybody. Cole Swider had at least 3, maybe 4 training camp offers. Chose the Pacers over elsewhere because he likes the fit here and likes the opportunity that he will have here with the team. Wants to be a movement shooter, obviously. Thinks he can really shoot for this team. Has already fit in well with their pace, clicking well with Carlisle. Carlisle also a factor, by the way. And in picking the Pacers over other teams. Fun to hear from him and hear why he picked the Pacers. I think now we have totally caught up on new guys. Myles Turner had an interesting note today, yesterday, I can't remember, which was about defense. And we were talking to him about the Pacers defensive scheme and what he's had to do and how he's had to adapt. I found it really interesting to hear him talking about the differences between early career Myles Turner and present Myles Turner defensively. We weren't talking about like generic impact or how good his level of play has been. That's a different question. But he now recognizes and talked about that he has to be up higher on screens in particular. And like, look, if you're a big man in the NBA in 2025, you're going to be defending a screen like 40% of possessions, right? So he's up way higher, right? They want to make that disruptive. They want to make it harder for the ball handler to just turn and see space. Turner was excellent in drop. It's different now. I'm not saying it's better or worse. Maximizing Turner may not maximize the whole team, but that's different for him. And right, hearing him talk about that, which that's an adjustment to what he used to be good at. Like even he, who is one of, if not the most impactful defenders on the team, has to work through that kind of thing, right? And so last year, as they changed schemes, that was different for him. And so I'll be curious if he looks not at the level he used to be on defense, but just better with a year of the system under his belt. And with the team in general better at it as they were down the stretch of last season. I still wonder, right? I think they're right to say, hey, we were 18th in defense after the All-Star break last year. We think we could be a better defensive team. I still wonder if there's some March flukiness in that. March is a typically very weird month in the NBA, since some teams are very tank-tastic and there's just some funky results with seeding and all sorts of stuff going on. And people will say, no, you're over-indexing on that. Maybe I am, but March in the NBA is just weird. But I did enjoy Myles Turner's comments on his defense. If you could find that video or interview somewhere, I would highly recommend listening to it. I want to talk about the player I think has stood out the most, a player in a certain spot in the rotation that surprised me, who Tyrese Haliburton thinks is the best player, a guy shooting in ways that I didn't expect. And then I want to get to the Knicks' big trade. It became official today for me, talking yesterday for you guys listening. There's an ex-Pacer in it. Why I think it's so fascinating, what it means for the Eastern Conference. Before we get to more practice notes for the Pacers early in their first week, though. We need to talk about the great people over at FanDuel. Thursday night, NFL back for the week, coming up very quickly. And with the NFL season underway, you can get in on the action with a big return on FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook. When you get that hunch, it's the middle of a game, you get the gut feeling, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play data for games, and so much more on the same place where you're making said bet. So you can be more informed for your hunches, for your gut feelings, whatever they may be. Just go to that page. Oh, you can do that, or you could check the stats and do something else, or you could view the live play-by-play to know, oh, this touchdown coming, who's hot, who's not. That's the way to go. And if you want to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, FanDuel is the way to go, because you place your first $5 bet, you will get that $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That is all on FanDuel.com. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, the first NBA storyline that popped in my head, super nerdy. I heard Kevon Looney shot corner threes at Warriors practice. I have no idea if Kevon Looney shoot threes, but Locked On Warriors will tell you more about the Warriors in camp. Steph Curry in season 16. A lot of players. I saw how many years they've been in the league this week, and I don't know why it hit me this year in ways it never has before. Like, I'm not that old, so none of these really surprised me, but Brandon Ingram in year 9 and Steph Curry in year 16 both just like smoked me, ran me over like a truck. Time moves way too fast in the NBA. You know who else is moving fast for the Pacers is Bennedict Mathurin. Bennedict Mathurin is doing very well in one-on-one drills. They do this every day, at least so far. They've done it every day, as it's been described by Rick Carlisle. They work through certain parts of practice, and they do defensive stuff. Then they get to this one-on-one drill or one-on-one tournament. They sort into guards and bigs and wings and or whatever. And Ben Mathurin has won both days. He's come home with the tournament title. And his opponent in the finals has been the same player both days. It was Jarace Walker, the third guy. The first day was Myles Turner. The second day was Aaron Nesmith. But those two have been the finalists both days. I think that is fascinating. I think Ben Mathurin, the competitor, and Ben Mathurin's skill set make him very good in the one-on-one drill. It was funny. Like we walked into practice and Pascal Siakam was sitting next to us complaining about Ben fouling him during the drills and stuff. But that's just how Mathurin is, right? He's going to do whatever he can to win. That's what Haliburton said. He said Mathurin looks competitive, and it's refreshing to just see him playing. And I'll get to who other people have said and what other players have done from a role perspective. But if you asked me, and this will happen in radio hits and stuff like that, Tony, who's impressed you the most in training camp? I would say Mathurin, just from the stuff we can watch, which is not very much, right? It's been Mathurin to me. He looks really mobile and in great shape. He's doing very well in these drills. His shot looks different in a good way. I watched him take pull-up threes for a really long time on Wednesday, and I can't even explain it. His form looks pretty similar, but the shot just looks like it has more arc. Just a little, not a lot. And he didn't have a flat shot before, but it was, I would say, like under the ideal arc. I think he's got the ideal arc now. It's just a little more. I want to ask him about it when we get him for media, about if he did any tweaking with his shooting, because it looks really nice. And he was drilling these pull-up threes. TJ McConnell jokingly sprinted over to contest one. He just buried it, right? Like it's that little stuff that always just sticks in my head. He looks really good in what I can see, and I think that, of course, is a nice deal for the Pacers, because one of the things I said in the questions pod for the shooting guards, talking about Ben Mathurin, was, what does fit look like for him this year? There's a lot of paths that could go. Shooting is one of them. And if he's just a great shooter and all the rest of his skills are exactly the same as last year, he'll be a much better player. He'll play a lot more. He'll be very impactful. So he's been my personal standout. I asked Tyrese Haliburton who his standout has been. He said Ben Shepherd has been balling. Ben Shepherd, of all players. Ben Shepherd came in. Every rookie comes in and they're just like, oh, I'm in the NBA. What's going on? And Ben Shepherd came from Belmont, and like no one knew if he'd be a first-round pick, and then he was. And they talked about this last year. Like, he really wanted to play the right way. He would always try to move the ball. He would always cut. He would never really shoot unless he was so wide open on defense. All this stuff he did really well. That really matters, right? But he never shot it. He was like afraid to miss and afraid to mess up, and was new to the NBA and was just, all that stuff. And the Pacers joked they had to bully him into shooting. Well, now, according to Haliburton, Ben Shepherd has a year of experience. He's more confident. He knows what's expected of him. He knows how he can attack training camp to become a better player. Apparently, he looks very good to Tyrese Haliburton because of all that stuff, the confidence, the extra juice. So that would be a major deal for the Pacers if their reserve 3-and-D wing looks a lot better. But let me stop myself right there. Is Ben Shepherd really going to be the 3-and-D wing? We don't know this. Let me stop right here. I have my own guesses for what the rotation will be. We've gotten breadcrumbs or hints of what the rotation could be for the Pacers. We do not know right now. It's been 2 days of practice. Last year, go back to Memphis, first preseason game. Who was the backup 4? Jordan Nwora. He was not in the rotation at all. That did happen. Isaiah Jackson was the backup 5 for that preseason game. He never was the backup 5 until Jalen Smith rightly passed him and held that spot for a long time. What the rotation is right now does not matter for opening night, does not matter for Thanksgiving. The things will change as players earn roles and injuries happen and all sorts of things. But I did do this. You can't if you're listening and not watching on YouTube. My ear did perk out when we learned on the first day of practice that Jarace Walker was the backup 3. And he worked with the blue team that day, which was McConnell, Mathurin, Walker, Toppin, and Isaiah Jackson. Instantly, I was like, man, if whatever it is, the thing that he's doing to get on the floor and be with that group, that's huge. Now, it's very interesting to me. The last 2 notes about practice I've explained to you. One is Jarace Walker played the backup 3 with that group. They've talked about moving Walker to the 3. He feels more comfortable on defense, right? We talked to Jarace. He, being in year 2 makes him more confident, but the work he did with Siakam, some summer league success, feeling more comfortable in the defensive scheme for the Pacers, like he feels a lot better. If he can do all those things in games, great. He should probably play some. But if Ben Shepherd, who was already in the rotation, is a good player, also looks good, well, can you play both? Probably not, unless you take someone else out completely. It's too hard to play 11 guys. It sounds great. Let's play everybody. It's not reasonable to do. So I don't know how the Pacers are going to sort that out, right? And that's why we can't make some assumptions on the rotation right this second. There's still a lot that has to happen. But I have found that to be interesting. 2 notes from early camp is, one note is, hey, look, Jarace Walker's with this group. And the other note is, hey, Ben Shepherd looks pretty good. What's going to give there, right? That seems like the 10th man discussions. Maybe things could change, but such is life. So that's the notes on those 2. I'll have a story up about Jarace tomorrow and probably a story about Isaiah Jackson tomorrow. I don't know. There's so many stories from early camp. It's too hard to keep up. Speaking of Isaiah Jackson, he feels, I saw Jalen Smith in a Bulls jersey today for the first time. Isaiah Jackson feeling good from his playoff experience. He's gotten more confident every year. Rookie year was a rookie year. He didn't play very much, but then he's had under his belt. Then he played serious minutes on a better team. Then he played in the playoffs and played very well. And Jalen Smith is gone. Like, his confidence level just keeps getting higher and higher. And so, proving he can contribute on that stage has him feeling good. But this piqued my interest. The very first thing I saw this season, we walk in, I'm scanning the baskets, who's with who's working with who, what's going on. The first player I see shooting is Isaiah Jackson. Whoa. He was shooting corner threes. He drilled the very first one I watched. I did not watch any of the rest of his threes because I was scanning around the gym. But he made the first one I saw. I have no idea how many he made after that. He said he's working with Jenny Busick on that. Big deal. That is a big deal. If she can help him become a better shooter in the way she has for McConnell and Andrew Nembhard, I don't even know how many threes Isaiah Jackson should take. Maybe none. But if it's actually a thing that can work out, that you're not freaking out about it, if you're the Pacers, that's a huge deal, right? Even though he's a vertical spacer, if he can be a spacer in every direction, that's even better. I don't anticipate him taking more than maybe 53s to 83s this season. But if he does, one, that's a sign that he's confident enough to do it. And 2, that's a sign the Pacers are confident enough in him to let him do that. So I thought that was pretty noteworthy as well. I'll have a story on Isaiah Jackson up at some point in the next couple of days as well. So lots of fun stuff going on early in camp. That's all the notes I thought were share this with the public worthy. Stuff that I saw, stuff that was said, stuff that we know, what's different this year than last year. That's the end of the list. Let's talk about an ex-Pacer who made a lot of money, mostly so I can talk about the Knicks trade. Dwayne Washington Jr., congrats to you, sir. We're going to talk about that and where the Knicks stack up in the East and compare to the Pacers to close out today's show. And we are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, any of the teams involved in this trade. Locked On Hornets, Locked On Knicks, Locked On Wolves. It's official. It's done. Karl Anthony Towns is a New York Knick. That's crazy. 2 years in a row with a day or two before training camp. Major deal. If you count Drew Holiday, you could say that there was one right into camp when this one officially was done, even though it was agreed to already. So, look, Dwayne Washington's the only ex-Pacer in this trade. He's going from New York to Charlotte. I got beef. Not beef. I think it's silly the way that this is allowed to be constructed because of a certain NBA rule. Dwayne Washington, still the majority of his NBA appearances have come with the Pacers. 3 2-way deals in the league. He got a huge payday because he was signed and traded. If you get signed and traded, 3-year deal has to exist, and the first year has to be guaranteed. So Dwayne Washington's getting paid this year now by the Hornets. And maybe he gets waived. I presume he would because there was some reporting that Dwayne Washington was the holdup of this trade because he's playing overseas right now for Partizan. And he had to get bought out have his Euro release clause exercised to do this, even though he'll probably get waived by the Hornets and maybe just re-sign with Partizan. They have a press release up about it. And the press release literally says more information on this transaction will come. So interesting ex-Pacer involvement in this trade. Also interesting, he got $1 more than his minimum salary. And I hope that people went, what? Why? That's so weird. Well, let's talk about that part before we talk about the Knicks and what it means for the Pacers. Dwayne Washington Jr.'s minimum salary this season with a guy with 3 years of service would have been $2,162,000 and $7. I just said the wrong number. $2,162,606 was Dwayne Washington's minimum. He got $2,162,607, $1 more. Charlie Brown also signed and traded from the Knicks to the Hornets. Got $1 more than his minimum. Interesting. What's going on here? So here's the deal. The rule is that no longer can you do what the Suns did last season to get Royce O'Neal. You can't just throw a bunch of minimum contracts together and send them out for salary matching. You can't do that. So the Knicks said, okay, we won't stack minimum contracts. We'll stack $1 more than minimums because they were over an apron and the Timberwolves are over an apron, so they can't take back more money than they send out. Well, there you go. The Knicks send out these fake stacks of money, and all of a sudden they're taking in less money than they send out, even though in actuality their roster gets more expensive. Very clever trade. Minnesota, that part was easy. The Hornets get 3 seconds and a bunch of cash for doing nothing. I don't want to get too opinion-y, but this does affect the Pacers. It's in their conference. It's a team that they played in the playoffs last year. And one, I wanted to congratulate Dwayne Washington for probably getting paid by Partizan, then the Hornets, and then Partizan again. That's great. Good, get your money if you can kind of stuff for these players. So, first of all, for trade stuff, I love it for Minnesota. I already said that. I really like it for New York in terms of their starting five. We'll see about their depth. The Hornets basically just rented out their room exception for maybe 2 crappy second rounders. And now like they can't use that on a real player or a different salary dump later in the season. So I'm very surprised they did this now that I know their total return. Maybe I'll end up being wrong. And it's kind of phony because the Knicks paid these guys $1 more than their minimum to get around a rule. I'm sure the NBA is like, no, we tried to enforce this rule this way for a certain reason. The difference being that not every team can sign a guy to $1 over the minimum, but everybody can sign a guy to a minimum unless you're hard capped. I don't want to get too in the weeds, but I think the NBA has got to be thinking about making a rule change from this trade just because in practice, 3 players who probably won't be in the league this year are now taking up a contract exception slot with a team that aren't going to play, right? So even though this trade is legal and is fine, and I wonder if the league will think, how can we make this a little different? Clever work by the Knicks. Their new front office is very smart. I like it for Minnesota. But the Knicks part's the part that matters the most to the Pacers, right? The Knicks are good. They were good last year. They were the 2 seed. They were up 2-0 on the Pacers. That series went 7, right? They're good. They got talent. They got, Anunoby was hurt in that series. Mikal Bridges is now on the team. They lost Isaiah Hartenstein, which I think is an underratedly big deal. But now they have Cat, right? So their top 5 is amazing. They have some interesting depth, although they're pretty shallow. But if their starting 5 clicks, they're going to be really good. So that's what I think is going to be fascinating, is can they handle any injuries? And if Knicks Pacers does happen, I do still wonder because I think this happened last year. And I think, the banged up nature of the Knicks added to this, but if you're a top-heavy team that plays your top 5-6 guys, 40-plus minutes in the playoffs, that's fine. That has traditionally worked very well throughout all of time. That is less fine against the Pacers because you have to run so much against the Pacers. You're exhausted. You can't do that for 40 minutes. And so in the third quarter, you're getting beat a lot. Or in the second quarter, you're getting beat a lot. Maybe in the fourth quarter, you get some second win. But, it's just really hard to do that against the Pacers. Well, the Knicks are shallow. So I wonder if that will be a thing again, even though I think the Knicks are really good. I mean, their starting five is well equipped to handle just about any team in the league, Pacers included, with the amount of offense they have and the amount of rebounding they could have. So they're going to be all about health and attrition and just general that kind of stuff because their bench is not very good. I'll be very, very curious to see how the Knicks handle this because I think their top-end talent fits extremely well together. Extremely well together. But can it all actually click? Can it all actually work? I don't know. And can they get away with their cap tomfoolery? Well, they already did. They have Karl-Anthony Towns. But very, very fascinating trade. And it's been funny to chronicle the Knicks this offseason because I said early when I was ranking the East, I'd put them in the tier 2 behind Boston. And then I said, kind of worried about my interpretation of the Knicks and where they should be on the Pacers matchup scale because, turns out Mitchell Robinson's out longer than we all thought. And so I said, I'm going to knock them down a peg. And then they traded for Cat. Now I would like to move them back up that peg. I knocked them down. So credit to the Knicks for getting this done. Credit to Dwayne Washington for getting $2 million to just exist over in Europe. And credit to everybody who makes content in the offseason who got to talk about this trade up to this point. It is very meaningful for the Pacers, though. A team around their range continues to get better. Knicks now out of stuff to do, right? This is their team for probably the next 2-3 years is what the apron shelf life of this team looks like it'll be. That's why I'm very curious how it fits. They have probably another move in them. They have another extra first and some good seconds, but what that looks like and who it is will be very telling and will matter a lot to the Pacers who hope they can continue to beat the Knicks in the postseason, but they're a better team, at least especially at the top. I like this trade for basically everyone involved except the Hornets. If I'm the Hornets, I wouldn't have done this at this stage, but you can't fault a team for getting cash, getting 3 seconds, and saying, hey, we have a new front office. We're open for business. Come to the Hornets for your financial needs. Anyway, that's the trade. I think the Pacers are going to have some trouble with the Knicks this year. That team's going to be pretty good, but they can beat them. They can beat anybody. Practice will resume Friday. Fan Jams on Sunday, so we'll have more practice notes next week. But what we're really going to have is tomorrow the power forward season preview. Siakam, Toppin, and then lots of notes on 2A guys, Kendall Brown and James Johnson. Next Monday, we'll preview the preseason, and Tuesday, we'll finish that series up with the center season previews, and then it's game action discussions. Can't wait. Pacers basketball is almost here. Hope you guys enjoyed this little behind-the-scenes look into training camp and why I really just wanted to talk about the cool stuff and the not-so-cool stuff of this Knicks-Timberwolves Cat trade. Tomorrow, back talking power forwards. I'm on Twitter at Tony R. East, and the show is there at Locked On Pacers. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, let me know what you thought or what you think of what you've heard about the Pacers early practices. Till then, everybody have a wonderful day.